All right, good evening. It's promptly 7 p.m. And we have seven commissioners here. So I'll just get it started. Hope everyone's doing well. Today is the November 2025 meeting of ANC 1C, representing Adams Morgan. I guess we can just jump straight into our agenda, start with calling to order and introducing commissioners. We got enough numbers to start with the lowest, right? Commissioner Balaki, let's start with you.
Thank you very much. Howard Balaki, District 01, which is the southwest corner of ANC 1C, basically the Washington Hilton over to 18th Street, the commercial area, and then up to Columbia Road with some residential. Thanks.
And I'm Peter Wood. I represent ANC 1C03. It's kind of right in the middle, 18th to 19th, Biltmore to Wyoming.
Maria Lee Steinman, 1CO4, right north of Peters District, so Biltmore, Calvert, 19th, 20th, and a little bit of Adams Mill Road.
Scott Olson, 1CO5, the middle part of Lanier Heights from the Safeway on Columbia Road to the rear entrance of the zoo.
Hi, Linda Laughlin, 1CO6, the other side of Lanier Heights on the eastern side of Adams Morgan between Harvard, Columbia Road, Ontario, and yeah, those are all, and 16th Street.
David Fucillo, 1CO8, between 16th and Ontario and Calorama in Florida, across the street from the Harris Teeter and across the street from ...
Hi, District. Thank you, David. That was a great intro. I'm Catherine, and I am 1CO9, which, as David said, is right near the Harris Teeter. I'm on the other side of the Harris Teeter, so Columbia Road, 17th Street, Calorama, 16th Street.
All right. Thanks, everyone. So that's introductions. We're missing two commissioners this evening, so we have 7 of 9. Next item is to approve tonight's agenda. So I would like to, we have a pretty light agenda in terms of kind of official items, but I would like to move to add one late item on the understanding that doing so would not be adverse to the neighborhood. Could I get a second for discussion, please? The item is having someone testify on behalf of the commission at tomorrow's roundtable on streeteries, by the way. Can I get a second?
I second this item.
Commissioner Ellison. So yeah, just really briefly, I just heard about this roundtable yesterday, so I would have put it on earlier if I had been aware. Not really sure who to blame, so I'll blame myself for not paying enough attention. But hopefully we'll be able to. I already registered or registered to testify, but we can decide if someone else or what our best approach is, or at least discuss that possibility later in the meeting. So I think it is in general a good thing because use of our public space is something that affects our neighborhood, but also like really disproportionately relevant to Adams Morgan because we were the home of the only, as far as I know, pilot project for streeteries in the District of Columbia, and haven't really, as far as I've seen as chairperson and also commissioner of an SMD with a lot of streeteries, haven't had any communication officially on this whatsoever from the mayor's office, from any other office, DDOT, anything, either from the pilot project being paused or for whatever's going on right now. I've only seen it because people shared social media posts. So I think it's important for us to have our voice there as a community and a commission. Any other thoughts, questions on adding this to the agenda? Also, we have nothing else, so we have a little bit of time to talk if we need to. All right, so all those in favor of the addition, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, the motion passes. So now we have, barring any last minute reservations, this is the opportunity to share those if you have them. We will approve tonight's agenda going once, twice. All right, so tonight's agenda is finalized with the caveat that I'll copy and paste that line to the right line in a minute. So now officers' reports. I'll start with the chair's report. Don't really have like too many like specific commission function items to discuss, but one that I will discuss that's kind of outside of my SMD but relevant to the commission. I've mentioned before the Taft Bridge along Connecticut Avenue, which is kind of at the corner of multiple ANCs and technically multiple wards on Connecticut Avenue. It's moving ahead semi-slowly, but they're moving ahead with construction to erect safety barriers, pretty similar to the ones that are already in place on the Duke Ellington Bridge on Calvert. So it's been a long process. Hasn't been the easiest process, but it's been something that was being planned, and now there's actually physical fencing temporary fencing to eventually put permanent fencing up there. So hopefully through the few months ahead, well, the next year ahead is the schedule, I think, to get that finalized. But it's nice to see that. I've been involved in a lot of the meetings with DDOT for that as well, for like 2 years or something, 3 years, I forget. So still more work to do, but most of the work is in the hands of construction workers and not the people trying to figure out the budgeting and plans for those construction workers. So that's nice. All right, next would be Secretary's report. All you, Commissioner.
Thank you. November committee meeting schedule will be posted online on groups.io, our website, and next door after this meeting. And we've been holding office hours on Thursdays, pretty much every Thursday, held them last Thursday at the line from 5 to 6. Everybody is welcome, so please stop by. Thanks.
Thank you for that. And Treasurer's report. Commissioner.
Okay, I'm going to put this in the chat so everyone can see it too. The treasury report. This link should always work and take you here, so any member of the public at any time can go and have a look. Our current balance is about $16,000. On the day of our last meeting, we received our allotment for the previous quarter. So October is the start of the fiscal year 2026, but it took that long for us to get our allotment for the previous quarter, in part because of unusual things going on with the city's budget. Our fiscal year 2026 quarter 1 allotment has not yet arrived. This kind of delay is apparently not unusual, and it is related to the fact that the city needs to close its fiscal year 2025 finances before it can issue a fiscal year 2026 transaction. So I don't have any update on when that will come, but OANC has let me know that this doesn't have anything to do with the completeness of or accuracy of our financials. This is just apparently par for the course. We dispersed the $3,000 grant to Platform of Hope. There's some follow-up requirements for reporting there. I think they'll probably dispense all the money before those reporting requirements happen. So I'm hopeful that we can have like a positive experience running a grant as a commission, and that will work very well. And also just make a note that we're planning to renew our digital meetings manager services with Sean Sullivan, who's running the meeting now. Thank you, Sean. My understanding is that because this expense is clearly covered in our approved budget, we don't need a separate approval and vote for it. So I'm going to proceed with that assumption. If anyone reads the code differently than me, we can always take a vote on it. But I'm hoping we can do more and more things just inside of our existing budget, so we don't have to spend so much time on those sorts of details. That is all from me, unless folks have any questions.
Any questions, commissioners? No, thanks for that. Very detailed, very helpful. And yeah, cheering for less negative or more positive experiences with the dispersion process. It's possible. We've had it before, but it's kind of hit or miss. All right, so next on the agenda would be commissioner announcements. Who wants to go first? Anyone? Start at the top. I guess we started backwards, or we'll go backwards now. So 1CO9, how about you? And if you're the chair of a committee as well, please mention any committee matters.
We completed a Halloween trash walk. Thank you, Commissioner Diamond, Commissioner Wood, for helping out with that. We did also have our first community cleanup in 1CO9 of the fall. About 3 weeks ago now, I guess. We're going to do another one on November 16th. I'll send out an email, I'll post on groups.io and Nextdoor. Please come. There's a lot of trash after Halloween. We had pretty much cleaned it all up, and now it's back. So we got to go out and get it. And then last, there's going to be a walkthrough with representatives from Councilman Murdo's office and DPW on Friday to discuss illegal dumping, overgrown tree boxes on Mozart, and the rat burrows on 17th Street. Big shout out to Tanya, who lives in my district, for setting that up. But if anyone wants to join, let me know. And that's all I've got.
1CO8, all you.
Yeah, so 1CO8 and also chair of the planning, zoning, and PZT committee. We did not have a meeting this month. Or this past month in October. TBD on this month. We're still sorting that out if there's going to be anything on the agenda. So nothing to report there right now. 1CO8 and bordering with 1CO7, the Champlain substation project continues afoot. The next meeting updating on that. It sounds like we'll be on December 2nd. Just got an invite for that. So probably in early December, or at our December meeting, I'll have if we have a December meeting, I'm not sure the holidays, I'll have an update on that.
Thank you. CO6.
Right, so we did not, for updates specific to the PSC, the Public Service and Environment Committee, we did not have a meeting last month, but we'll be doing follow-up with the grant application that we had to get the follow-up documentation on that. And then I'm gonna cancel the November meeting as well because it's the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. And I'm also getting knee surgery on November 21st, so that following week I will not be I don't want to be online. And we may have to schedule or rethink for December as well, because it's just we're falling into holidays. So when you get to the end of the month, it's just tough. But then more specific to my SMD and 1C06, their DDOT has put out, and they've had a couple meetings on this, but only a part of it sort of hits our ANC area. But DDOT is preparing work and taking comments on their proposed plans for the continuation of the Columbia Road bus project. So part of those changes would include constructing a roundabout at the intersection of Harvard Northwest and Argonne Place Northwest. So that's the furthest point east in our ANC area. And there's also discussion to convert that tiny section of Harvard that goes from that intersection up to Mount Pleasant Street, to convert one side of that into a one-way street for cars that would be going westbound only. So like going down the hill to the zoo. And then only cyclists and buses could continue to use the 2-lane part of that stretch of Harvard. I'm going to throw in the link in our chat, the webpage for the priority bus project, but I really would like people to submit comments specifically related to the construction of a roundabout and the one-way, if they convert it to one-way street. I know that this could be sort of a big change for people, particularly if you are a car driver and you use Lanier to go up Argonne, then to go over to Harvard to turn onto Mount Pleasant to get to Irving and 16th Street. It is one of the few ways that direction. And so I think it's really important DDOT gets feedback. And I was informed by DDOT that they will be doing some metrics, doing some studies to sort of look at the amount of traffic that could be impacted. And so I will make sure to follow up with on that. And I think at some point, Chair Wood, we may want to invite DDOT to do a presentation as well. But I know I think the roundabout probably would be helpful for safety, but I know it's a big change for folks. And so it's really important that you get your comments in now so they can be taken into consideration as they continue this work. And I will throw those links in the chat. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me as well.
Thank you.
Those are all my updates.
Olson.
Yeah, one CO5, not a lot of traffic from constituents that I've heard about. I think the things that are on my mind are the Crosstown project that Commissioner Laughlin was just talking about. Personally, I'm very excited about this. I encourage people to look especially at option 2, which I think is really great for people who ride the bus and folks who are using bikes or other micromobility vehicles. There's also the opportunity, I think, and this gets to what Commissioner Laughlin was talking about, of changing the one-ways and so forth in this area. If you just look at the street plan, it kind of seems like a non sequitur, but it needs to be related to changing of the signal phasing on 16th, which I think is really needed, because if you ever need to make a turn there, it's always such a cluster of something. So I think this is a thing that I asked DDOT about, and I encourage other people as they look at the plans to think about, is that signal phasing on 16th and maybe making the traffic that moves that way smoother and safer. The Street View program is on my mind. We'll be talking about that a bit more. WABA's Bicycle Summit is coming up. And I don't know. Otherwise, in 1CO5, it's the usuals, things like the vacant property at 2920 Ontario, which is actually just over in Commissioner Diamond's district. So great segue.
All right. Hi, everybody. 1CO4. A couple of updates. So, Commissioner Olson and I both were at the open house last night regarding the Columbia Road bus project. And the presentation was really amazing because they had gigantic maps and you could see everything and put your comments on post-its. And had reached out to a lot of folks in my SMD in my old neighborhood on Harvard Street to alert them to the open house because I feel like we in Adams Morgan now are sort of living with a bus and bike lane project that people felt like they didn't have enough input and enough public comment time. And DDOT has really gone out of their way to provide public comment. So I really do encourage everybody to look at the plans. And it doesn't matter if you're mostly a cyclist or a pedestrian or a driver. There are different options that impact those different constituencies very differently. And there's some other things like moving of bus stops in order to make it safer and taking away bus stops to make the buses go faster. So if you feel passionately about that, this is your chance to speak up, and it's better to speak up now, even if your opinion isn't ultimately the decision that's made. You have lifted up your voice, and I think that's really important. So definitely check out the links in the chat. In terms of 1CO4, we had a very successful Halloween, which is the trick-or-treating that takes place in the alley, which is really fantastic. There were many, many Porch Fest acts in 1CO4, and I was on most of the time cleanup duty. I just can't get away from carrying around those little trash sticks. And many people were very thankful and actually noticed the work that the volunteers were doing. I feel like it was a great community event and very successful. Uh, so that's my report for 1CO4.
Thank you for that, and thank you for your service as always, cleaning up the trash. So 1CO3, actually, before I do that really quickly, there's a comment or question regarding the Columbia bus project if ANC1C plans to have anyone from D.com come. Not technically written in an agenda, but I expect that to happen at some point. Just don't know which month and which meetings. Hopefully multiple, honestly. Back to 1CO3 and also the Alcoholic Beverage Control and Public Safety Committee. Next meeting will be a week from today on Wednesday, what is that, November 12th. Don't have much on the agenda. I think there's one renewal for a liquor license that's come up. Don't know, pardon me, don't know if we'll have to discuss it much. Hopefully have an MPD officer on again, but they said it'll just vary month to month if they're going to be available at that time. So it's kind of hard to predict. So might be a brief meeting. 1CO3 matters. There's always a lot going on, but the things that stick out in the past month-ish. First, and we'll talk about it more generally later in this meeting, but streeteries are on a lot of people's minds. And one specific thing relating to a streetery that isn't really worth noting, besides the part that I think is interesting for people who like bureaucracy for some reason. There's very few things that ANC commissioners, as individual commissioners, can kind of have some sort of like official capacity influence, and one of those is in the top system, and one of those is just requests for very specific things like in public space. So like one time I remember back in 2021, there was a request to put on the sidewalk like a hand sanitizer dispenser. So in order to go through that, there's a formality that the SMD's representative has to basically say that they're okay with it. It's a formality, but it's one thing that we do get to do. That happened with space in front of the green zone recently, which is kind of just switching around some of the way that the parking spots or the street space is allotted in order to hopefully this is a request from the Adams Morgan bid to try to make it a more efficient use of space. There's also construction happening on 18th Street independent of that, so the green zone might have to temporarily remove their streetery. And then also more generally, as I said, there's other questions of how many streeteries will be able to if how many businesses can afford to keep their streeteries. So there's a lot going on with that. Not going to go and belabor the point right here. Another thing that happened, so 4 years ago, almost to the day, in 2021, an employee of a business in ANC 103 was leaving work and got struck by a driver and killed. And it was tragic, and we've talked about before, and it was really hard, continues to be hard. And the driver of that car was convicted of two misdemeanors, I think, this past month. ANC 1C and myself weren't involved with the official legal proceedings at all. Just kind of waited to see what would happen and learned about the legal process and the complications of how that all works. But if anyone has any questions, come to me privately. I'll do the best as I can to answer them. But like I said, I wasn't involved with the legal matter at all. Just kind of aware of the general situation. And hopefully that offers at least some semblance of closure to the family, although it'll never be enough. Uh, on a brighter note, wait, is it a brighter note? What's my note? Yeah, this last one's a brighter note. Calorama Park, $2 million that we've been waiting to get distributed. We advocated for it at least a year ago, something like that. Last year's budget, erosion mitigation funds got $2 million in the budget. Looks like the DPR is finally able to slowly move ahead. I think that they're now in the planning phase officially for the project. I think hopefully maybe soonish having a website for the project. And I think at least the latest update was that the construction work for actually doing the physical changes to make the mitigation of the hills happen will be summer 2026 to fall 2026. Hopefully it doesn't get delayed. We'll see. But there's progress on that front, so hopefully that's a good sign. And yeah, I'll stop there. That's all. One last update from single member district commissioners. Thank you for your patience, Commissioner Falke.
No, thank you very much. I just have two items of interest. First, I wanted to mention, I saw in Washington Business Journal that the Universal Building project over in the far southwest corner of our little district has managed to find $79 million in capital funding down in Florida. So they only need another $321 million, and they'll be ready to begin this conversion, which is actually the largest business to residential conversion that's planned in DC at this moment. So that certainly will have an impact on the neighborhood. The other more immediate thing I wanted to mention is that it looks like DDOT is going to take a look at the traffic safety issues we are facing on 19th Street involved with the Oyster Adams School pickup and drop off. We had a whole bunch of people put in traffic safety inputs and asked them to take a look at this, and they've approved for this current fiscal quarter 22 different input requests that came from the area, including, I believe, the letter that was sent by the ANC back in July before I came back on board. So I'm pleased to report that, and I hope that this can lead to some serious consideration of things that need to be done to make that whole area safer for parents and children and neighborhood residents and so forth, particularly the intersection at 19th and Columbia, which just seems to constantly get clogged for a variety of reasons. And you can go out there any day of the week about 3:30 and just see a lot of kind of frustrated people. I mean, it's not the parents' fault that they're all showing up at the same time. That's kind of the way the system works, and we've got too many people and not enough pavement. So hope to see this move forward quickly, and thank everybody for their interest. And back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right, so that concludes Commissioner updates. Next item on our agenda is another update, but this time from Ward 1's Councilmember Brandon Nadeau. So welcome, Councilmember. Glad to have you here. I will say some more filler words as you're being promoted to panelist.
Good evening, friends. How are you all?
Glad to have you here. Doing all right.
Good to see you. Feel like spirits are a little more are lifted today after some good news around the country last night. So, okay. So, few updates from the council. Well, actually, many updates from the council. I'm not going to pretend that I'll be brief, like some of my colleagues like to say. I'll be brief is usually a warning that they're not going to be. Anyway, okay, so we had a legislative meeting yesterday. The big thing that came out of that, in my opinion, is that we voted to approve an increase in the earned income tax credit, which is a credit for working families. And we reestablished a child tax credit. You probably know that I felt very strongly that the FY26 budget that was presented to the council by the mayor was really balanced on the backs of working families. And I'm really proud that council members Parker and Fruman advanced an amendment yesterday to really undo some of that damage. as you may know, I am typically the taxer in chief over at the council. So it's kind of fun to pass the torch to the next gen council members on this one. And they did a great job and I was really proud to support them. The reason we were voting on taxes yesterday is a little esoteric. There was that big bill that got passed in Congress, the big budget thing that we don't call by the name that the Orange Man calls it. And that actually meant that because our tax code was what they call coupled with the federal tax code, we were going to actually lose a ton of money. So we decoupled it. And that saves us $600 million. And then we did that amendment where we increased tax credits and using a portion of that money. They're usually only once a year the council can move money around. But we got another chance yesterday, which is always very exciting for me because I like to play Robin Hood over at the council. So that was really great. And I'm proud of that. Okay, so I know you guys are going to talk more about streeteries later, and Adams Morgan has really been the epicenter of piloting these. Lots of feedback since those final regs came out, and we wanted final regs, but I don't think DDOT completely comprehended the way this would impact neighborhoods like Adams Morgan and 11th Street, where they've been successfully using streeteries in a particular model, and in particular in Adams Morgan, where there's been an investment by DDOT into streeteries, and we really want them to stay. So in part because of all the feedback from Ward 1, Councilmember Allen is holding a hearing tomorrow about the streeteries. And so I have a hearing at the exact same time, but my plan is to wrap up and go over there so I can ask a bunch of questions of DDOT. So thanks for everybody who's weighed in with me directly. I have been compiling those and sharing them with the chairman, and that is what got some action at the council tomorrow. So good job. That's our local government at work and showing that advocacy does work. So let's just bring it home tomorrow and make sure the chairman hears everything he needs to hear live, and that we get DDOT on the record, understanding the concerns that we still have. Last week, I held a roundtable on potential human rights violations here in the District of Columbia as a result of coordination with the federal government by our local law enforcement. There were more than 50 people who testified, and there would have been more, but I had to cap it at 50 so that we could actually get it done yesterday. People testified about all kinds of things they'd seen since January, but not surprisingly, most of the testimony was about ICE, Homeland Security's enforcement arm for immigration, and stories about ICE and MPD working together, which under the Sanctuary Values Act that we passed in 2020 should not be allowable. I do believe there may be some loopholes in that that's allowing this to happen, and that's probably the thing that I will examine next. But unfortunately, that doesn't come to me in my committee. And I do think that the reason so many people came to my committee, which is the Public Works Committee, to talk about MPD is because I'm the only one having hearings. So I do think it still is important to have one in the Judiciary Committee, and that folks should continue asking for that so we could get MPD to come and talk about this on the record. The mayor decided not to send any government witnesses to my hearing, so it was really just a robust community discussion. But what we heard was alarming, and certainly not in the spirit of the laws that we've passed in the district to try to keep our residents safe. We have a very large immigrant population in the District of Columbia. We have seen people snatched on their routes to school, on their children's routes to school, on their way to work, from their homes, from their workplaces. And this is devastating to our community and not acceptable. And there's no way that ICE would be as strategic and targeted as they are if they had not been provided with some local expertise and knowledge about where to find people and where people spend time in the District of Columbia. Because as we know, the National Guard's presence doesn't seem to have any local input because they're not actually hanging out where there's crime. And that's what happens when you don't have coordination with the feds. So this was really eye-opening. I had, of course, heard a lot of it as the Ward 1 council member, but bringing everybody together was really hard. It was a hard day for everybody. So So we will keep you posted on what's next after that roundtable and what my committee will be doing. The courts ruled last week that the federal government cannot withhold SNAP funding. That is our food assistance. And Mayor Bowser announced the DC government's going to cover any SNAP gap with local funds. So that's great news because we have 141,000 DC residents using SNAP benefits. We do have some food resources compiled for folks. They need them. Eliza Roche, my staff person, can share those with the ANC if they want to push them out through the Zoom. But they're also on my website under the resources bar if you want to look at briannecanado.com. I will briefly mention the bottle bill, which I know I've talked to you all about before. That's the bottle deposit container. That's our anti-litter bill. It got a hearing and there were more than 200 people there. And I really think we did a good job focusing the discussion on how the bill can address litter and improve outcomes for our community and drowned out the voices of the industry that doesn't want to have to be on the hook for paying for it. And the goal of this bill is to make the large bottling companies like Coke, Pepsi, Anheuser-Busch be the ones to pay for their pollution. And bottle bills have been successful in 10 states across the country, and we want to be the 11th. So stay tuned on that. The next steps are the bill moves on to the Committee on Transportation and the Environment, where it will be in the able hands of Councilmember Charles Allen. My committee also had a hearing on consumer protection on October 22nd. 3 bills. First, the Resale Act, that's meant to address scalping and fraudulent ticket sales and price gouging for entertainment. So at 930 Club, at the Anthem, and there's already a lawsuit right now against Ticketmaster and Live Nation, so we didn't get into that piece, but this was more with what happens once those tickets get released and the speculation around them that's making it so hard for your average person to just buy a ticket to go to a show that they love. So there was a lot of great testimony on that. And we also did the Enhancing Consumer Protection Procedures Act, which is highly technical, but basically making sure that we've done everything we can in the district to protect consumers from unfair and deceptive business practices. And this was written in partnership with the Attorney General. The third bill we heard was Housing with Integrity Act to create more consequences for landlords with repeated code violations. I know every single one of you ANCs deals with this just like I do. We hear from constituents whose landlords are just not keeping up the building, and we need to be able to do more. So my committee will mark up all 3 of these bills and move them forward. We are working furiously to try to get through the entire agenda of Public Works and Operations. We're also segueing to DPW, which is a big centerpiece of the committee, going to be holding a roundtable before the end of the year to bring DPW out. We're not going to have public witnesses, but we're going to bring DPW out to talk with us about issues that we are seeing across the city with trash collection, recycling, and then also debrief on street sweeping and talk about leaf collection. Leaf collection has begun. If you don't have the DPW app, I recommend it. It keeps you updated based on your address about what services are happening or being provided. And this week I convinced them, because we've been having so many issues with trash and recycling, to add an alert if your trash route is behind and they're going to have to come get it the next day. Most of us, when our trash is missed, we diligently put it into 311, but we don't really know why it's happened. And if DPW can tell us that there was a staff shortage that day, but they're going to make it up in the morning, then you don't even have to put the 311 in. You can just leave your cans out. And for me, even though I'm not thrilled when my trash isn't picked up, I do appreciate having that little bit of information. Calms me down a little bit, that they know there's a problem and that they have a solution for it. So as we continue to work through these issues, I'm really encouraging them to do more communication and to use that app that they created to send that information about collections out. So I saw they were doing it this week. I hope they keep it up, but I do recommend the app. It's useful to remind you about street sweeping, about leaf collection, and about other services being provided like e-waste collection days. And last week, the Committee on Housing held a hearing on my employer-assisted housing program for transit workers bill. So this is already a program for government employees, but transit workers aren't included, probably mostly because WMATA isn't technically part of the DC government. But we want them to live in DC and to become homeowners in DC. So the hearing was very positive, lots of great feedback on how to make the program work. And I am excited to see it move forward in the Housing Committee. This was some time ago now, but because this is a really important topic, and I believe ANC 1C weighed in on this, the Rental Act has now advanced out of the council after a third reading. I was able to successfully remove, on second reading, some harmful amendments and protect all housing, including affordable housing across the city. But at second reading, some council members tacked on an exemption for 2 to 4 unit properties across the city. This is probably the biggest change to TOPA since single family housing was exempted against my votes. I was one of the lone dissenters on that one. And we did build a strong coalition this time to try to defeat this, but we did not succeed. There were some clarifications to make it a little easier to implement, but this last minute change is going to have a huge implication for tenants around the city. It could impact up to 15,000 residents and 6,000 properties. And so I'm very concerned that these properties now will be exempt from TOPA. And in Ward 1, we know there are properties that we're about to undergo TOPA that fit into this bucket. So we need to buckle up because this is going to be really hard, and we're going to be walking our constituents through these changes. And unfortunately, a loss of rights for about 15,000 households across the city. So that is my update. I'm happy to take questions or not. It depends on where you are in your agenda and whether you'd like to move on, but I'm here.
Thank you. And that was brief, all things considering. That was nice. Commissioners, any questions, comments? I have one question. So correct me if I'm mistaken, emergency legislation was recently passed to instill 90-day curfew for youth across DC with MPD having the option to kind of unilaterally determine curfew zones around the city. Have you heard of any kind of mention of parts of Ward 1 where that might happen, where it
I think the best candidate for that in Ward 1 is U Street,
Okay.
because that is where we have a lot of youth gathering. I have not heard Adams Morgan mentioned, but it may, depending on what the determination comes from intelligence that we're getting. And the youth gatherings tend to be coordinated via social media, which is closely monitored by MPD. So if they get a tip that there's going to be a large gathering somewhere, then that's when they would declare that zone most likely. And you would learn it when I learned it. No heads up for the council.
Weird. I was just curious. And this question will probably sound not the way I wanted to, but I'll ask anyway. At least the mayor and I think maybe some other council members have kind of on multiple occasions said that there's evidence that these curfews work, but I haven't seen that before. Do you know what they're referring to? I've usually seen evidence of the contrary, that curfews are not actually that effective in
I
reducing.
don't know what they're referring to, unfortunately, and that is one of the reasons that I did not support this. The Halloween incident that made the news happened at I think 7:30 at night, which would not have fallen under this curfew. And a few weeks before that, a couple weeks before that, there was a threat. I shouldn't say threat. These are children, right? But there was a gathering proposed for U Street, a takeover of U Street. And what happened was youth serving organizations kind of tracked down the kids and talked with them, and they got them to call it off. And that was it. And my argument has been that that's the kind of work we should be doing rather than spending more money on police overtime and having to reprogram from other priorities in our budget. And working together with jurisdictions across the region, because a lot of times the kids are coming from places that have stricter curfews than ours. That's also one of the arguments. But I will say that I think we need to be a little more smart about this. It feels to me like the curfew feels to me like sort of lazy policy and not super effective. But and there have been a couple times where I do think, frankly, there could have been better preventative work. And like, for example, when Gallery Place got vandalized, they knew the kids were coming. It's private property. They could have just closed down. They could have limited access to the building, right? So these are the things that I think we should be doing as a city, is thinking creatively about how to de-escalate. But it's hard. I don't have all the answers by any means, and sometimes police do have to get involved. The federal law enforcement, however, should never get involved, and the National Guard escalating with our kids was a big problem for me. Sorry, that was a longer answer than you wanted, but
It's partly my fault. I appreciate the context. Thank you for all of that. Commissioners, any other questions, comments? All right. Thank you for being here, Council Member. We'll be in touch if we have anything else. Hope you have a nice night.
thanks. Have a great meeting. Take good care.
All right. So next on our agenda, thank you for your patience. Cheryl Hardy of the Adams Morgan Community Alliance is here to kind of give a brief overview of what they're hoping to do for Adams Morgan Day next year. Well, I'll give a quick preview. They're, I believe, trying to kind of give it ahead of the curve to try to make next year's Adams Morgan Day a bit more aligned with how it's been conducted in the past in terms of like street closures, things like that. So Cheryl, I think you're here, or Cece. If you either raise your hand and we'll get you promoted, or we'll find you. There we go. Yeah, thank you. All right, welcome. How are you doing? Just unmute yourself and we'll be able to hear. Thanks.
Oh,
Very
thank
good.
you.
Perfect.
Greetings, commissioners. Thank you guys for having me. So like Mr. Woods said, we are getting a head start on next year's event. I kind of want to go over the plans that we have. Can I share?
I think you should be able to.
Yeah, okay. The plans that we've come up with, our initial plans, I should say. Now I just have to find the
Looks like it's
can I do a oh, I can't find the link to, because it's hidden. Let me move this. I can move this down. I can run it from here. I was going to run the slideshow, but the
saw the button at a second ago, like in the bottom right. It disappeared though. Or you can also go to, where's the slideshow? Right in the middle, top middle. Maybe your view is different.
yeah, my view is a little different.
Yeah, no, it's, yeah, we can see it, but I guess you
Yeah,
can't.
we can just, I can just use this as
I
I
can still
go
see it.
along.
This seems okay.
So today I basically want to discuss who we are, the Adams Morgan Community Alliance, the purpose of the event details, and basically what we are planning to do for next year. Our proposed location and route in terms of closing the street. We are looking at closing 18th Street from well, I'll get to that point, but it's going to be from 18th and Calorama to 18th and Columbia. So I don't want to discuss that and who we are. So the Adams Morgan Community Alliance, the group formed in July of 2016 to support the community by stepping in to continue the tradition of the annual Adams Morgan Day celebration. At that point, we had a setback. So the festival is held every second Sunday, and next year will currently be our 48th year. It's the longest running neighborhood festival, and of course, it is solely ran by volunteers. Our goal is to hold a true community celebration each year. We have turned Adams Morgan Day back into a volunteer-run event, and our intent is to definitely be transparent and inclusive as possible. Our main goal is to lessen the tension in the community by combating community deterioration by sponsoring and promoting the event. We also engage in any activities and take any action deemed to be useful and necessary to also lessen the tensions in the neighborhood through the festival. I've been with this festival for some time, and I just remember like going back in the day as growing up in the DC area, that was one place where we always went after church. We always met at the Adams Morgan Day Festival to gather and meet friends. And now I get a chance to be on the board running, and I think it's a great thing. So our board consists of businesses in the neighborhood, or residents, can consist of, as you see, Adams American University's Humanities truck, and she's also a director. Ms. Angie Whitehurst volunteers with their community outreach. So we have a mix of people on the board, which is good. The purpose of the event, and as you know, the festival has been in existence since '78. Now, a close-knit group of neighbors and native Washingtonians, to include this gentleman named Topper Carew. Now, Topper Carew, he also came to Adams Morgan Day in 2024 and gave a kind of like an overview of the festival. So he's also the producer of the Martin sitcom as well. So this group, they began this vision to showcase the richness of the neighborhood's cultural heritage through music, dance, and fashion. Our goal is to continue the vision of this staple event, as well as focusing more on community partnerships. And like I mentioned, we do have someone that works in the community on the board, so that's a good thing. We have businesses that are getting involved and also trying to help out. So this community-driven, community-focused celebration is such a staple in the DC area that it also attracts patrons from Maryland and Virginia as well. So a lot has been going on with us with the festival. We have our, hold up, did I skip one? Let me make sure. Okay. Can you guys see this? That says event details. All right. So our event details, our proposed location, as I mentioned, we're looking at 18th Street at Calorama. That's going to close at Columbia Road, and also looking to close, I believe it's the side street where Euclid is, Euclid and Columbia, by the Line Hotel. The time of the event will be from noon to 6. However, including your setup and breakdown time, that'll run us from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. The event takes place in Ward 1, and we want to expect 50,000, but you know, years ago it was 200,000. I wish we could have 200,000 at the festival, but I'm going to settle for 10 to 20,000 with the streets closed. Now, you can't hardly see this map, but it kind of identifies of the street closing and then where the emergency routes will be. It's hard to see it. I have a better copy of it. And this is 18th and Columbia. We're looking at having the Dance Plaza stage will be at Calorama. A couple of blocks up from Belmont, we'll have a reggae stage. We're looking at the Jubilee music stage, as well as an additional music stage by the Line Hotel. This is just our wish list. We have a lot coming up, so hopefully things will go well for us. So this is our proposed timeline, the day of the event. 8 a.m., that's when the street closing will commence. 8:15, that's when our vendors, sponsors, tents, things like that arrive, and the delivery of the stages as well as setup will occur. So between 8:15 and 10 a.m., that's what should be occurring, and the sound equipment will come And those guys, of course, set up and deliver. So they should be done close to noon. At noon, that's when the performances on all the stages will start. 6 p.m. will be breakdown. And also the vendors, 6 p.m., that's when the stages and things like that will break down. Then the vendors will break down. 6:45 is when our tents and tables and chairs should pick up. And I thought the festival should run, we normally go from 12 to 7, but since it will be a lot of moving parts, since the streets will be closed, we will go back to 6 p.m. to close it. This is one of our high-level timelines. So the day after the festival, I was guided by the Mayor's Special Events Task Group to ensure that I would put in, I thought I made that change, excuse me, that I will put in the letter of intent for the Special Events Task Group. So that's what I did. We did that on the day after the festival, September 15th. October 21st, we met with Stephanie Avenkula. I think that's how you say her name. She's the Ward 1 liaison. She was discussing with us festival plans and, of course, just giving us pointers on the best way to approach it for street closing. Now, I've done this some years ago, but things have changed a little bit since the early 2000s. So I performed this with the festival during that time. November 5th, that's today, we are presenting to the ANC. And on the 10th, we have a meeting with the Mayor's Special Task Group to kind of review our plans for the festival. Next slide. So this slide kind of says, what do I need from ANC 1C? Documented support in favor of plans to close the street. And I've listed our email, and we need this information because the mayor's office is requesting this. Of course, we start with the ANC to make sure that you guys are in support of what we're doing or trying to do. And basically, they just want to have it on file that you are in favor of our plans to close the street. And I want to thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, thank you for all that. So commissioners, any questions, comments? That's really helpful. The timeline was especially helpful. So I'll add one comment just because I wasn't aware of the specific timeline of requesting documents until now. So our agenda is already finalized tonight, but our December meeting, I think pretty easily we can have it on an item on our agenda. We've had similar items in a consent agenda before. So if no commissioners want it off there, that would be pretty easy. We can do that. Just can't get it before the November 10th meeting, but December should be totally feasible. In the meantime, we could probably tell their task force the history of Adams Morgan's ANC's support for similar projects. And it's really unlikely that we would have a differing opinion at any point in the near future, just because it's really popular and people love Adams Morgan Day. But I can't officially tell them in 5 days that we voted on an item until we do, which would be next month.
Okay.
But thank you for presenting on this. Any last thoughts, commissioners? All right. Well, we'll be in touch again. It's nice to get this. I mean, it's probably a relief for you to get this going on so that you don't have to get to summer 2026 and be like, oh, Jesus, what do we do now?
Exactly.
Hopefully we'll get there. And have a good rest of your evening.
Right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Now, public announcements. Appreciate the patience of everyone who has been eagerly waiting to be able to speak. If you would like to share a few thoughts, please raise your hand and we'll get to you in the order they're received. We ask that you do your best to keep them to a brief limit. And if you're getting meandering after about 2 minutes, especially if you're not affiliated with a kind of city entity, I will politely ask you to wrap up. First up, Kristen Barden from the Adams Morgan Partnership and Business Improvement District. Welcome, Kristen. How are you doing?
Hey, everyone. Sorry, my voice is still recovering from Saturday, from Porch Fest. I did a lot of talking throughout the day, so you'll have to excuse me if if my voice is not 100% yet. Yeah, thank you all for your support for both the Apple Festival and Porch Fest. It was a huge, huge day. We have pedestrian counters, these devices around the neighborhood. You probably aren't aware of them. They're very small, but Brian pulled the data off of them yesterday, and according to those pedestrian counters, we had 68,000 people in the neighborhood. So which is like a record, I think. So Spring Porch Fest was only around 55,000. So even more people than the spring, which is terrific. Thank you all for that. We have our debrief with our team tomorrow. So if any of you have like, specific feedback for us that you want us to consider, please let us know. There were a lot of people on Columbia Road listening to the bands, and we did get some feedback from MPD that people were not staying on the sidewalks. So we might have to rethink about where we put bands on Columbia Road, because we need to keep Columbia Road moving. We might have to rethink that for the spring. But we'll be reapplying to MESDAG for a date, hopefully an early May date is what we would aim for. So an early May Saturday for the Spring Porch Fest. Yeah, so I wanted to talk a little bit about the streeteries, just to bring you all up to speed on what's happening. So yeah, the DDOT pilot project is ending. It started just about a year ago. The structures were installed just about a year ago. We surveyed all of the 33 businesses that are participating in that pilot, and only 3 of the 33 were interested in continuing. And by continuing, meaning, that they were willing to pay the fees, the public space fees to continue to use that space, that they would buy, the platform and railings and overhead structure from DDOT, and then they would also pay all the permits, not just the public space fees, but all the permits. So all of that cost is around between $13,000 and $15,000. So we asked the businesses if they, wanted to do that. Only 3 of 33 said yes. So there were not enough to justify keeping them. So DDOT is going to remove all of the streeters in the pilot area. Okay, so that's the 24 and 2300 block of 18th Street between Calorama and Columbia. So all of those are going to be removed the second week of December. Businesses will have to remove their personal furniture and other things that they have out there in that space. But the railings and platforms and structures, overhead structures, will be removed. It'll take probably a couple of weeks to remove everything. And we're going to try to make sure the DPW is coming around behind them, because we know that there's a lot of dirt and trash underneath there. There's probably rats, all kinds of stuff, right? So, but they will come around behind them to clean that up. So, it's just it's too expensive for the businesses to continue to use that space. It just, with the new permanent regs, it just doesn't make sense. So, and I'll speak to that during the hearing tomorrow that Councilmember Allen is having. So unfortunately, DDOT has killed their own program, so it's just not feasible for small businesses to take on that cost. So it is what it is. So it's too bad. But they didn't listen. They didn't listen, and they're killing their own program. So so happy to answer any questions about the streetery stuff, if you have any.
Yes. There are a couple of us. Commissioner Laughlin, go ahead.
Did DDOT give any details or specify why they want to discontinue this program?
Well, they're discontinuing the pilot because the businesses don't want to pay for it.
Okay.
So that's why. Yeah. So because the permanent program that starts November 1st, December 1st. The permanent program starts December 1st. So starting December 1st, they would have to pay the public space fees, the permit fees. They'd have to buy the structures, everything from DDOT. So, and we guesstimated that it's about $13,000 to $15,000.
And but businesses knew, so they knew a year ago that when this pilot ended, that they would have the option to buy the equipment and rent the space, did they know what the price tag would have been at that time, or did this number finally present?
Yeah, I don't think DDOT didn't know that number. I mean,
Okay.
But it's the $20 a square foot,
Yeah.
annual fee, plus then you have to pay for the barriers, right? Like the barriers aren't free.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask you if the Jersey barriers will be
Mm-hmm.
removed as well.
Yeah, those will go as well. Yeah. But so like they have to pay for everything starting December 1st.
Yeah.
And
And
it's just all too expensive.
No, and certainly given the current economy right now in the DC area, that's it's a big ask of a business.
Yeah.
And then the space will go back to being parking for cars.
Yeah, so it'll basically revert back to the curbside management plan that was in place in 2019, like right before the pandemic. It'll have the painted center median. It'll have traffic. I think there was 2 northbound lanes, right? 1 southbound lane, and then parking on each side, and there'll be some dedicated commercial loading areas. And DDOT, I think, just recently published an NOI that explains the whole new, well, it's not really new. It's going back to the way it was, and right before the pandemic,
Okay.
when the streetery program first started. So it'll basically look the same as it did, before. So,
Right.
except I think there might be a couple more loading zones.
Will there be
but-
maybe a delivery, like a zone for delivery food drivers? Like I'm thinking of China Light.
Yeah. Yeah,
I know they use their space. They didn't get like a built-in streeter. They just use the space so the drivers can like park between the barriers.
Yeah. So the space that's like right in front of City Lights and Grand Central, I think that's gonna stay like scooter parking or motorcycle
Okay.
parking. So I think like that area is gonna stay that. All of the 8 large planters that were part of the pilot streeter program, those are gonna stay. We're gonna keep those. Because those will just kind of protect the crosswalks and such. And that was what the way they were, originally designed anyway, was to do that. So those will stay. But so the DDOT has an NOI out that's I think it came out last week maybe, and there's a 30-day review for that. And then after that 30 days, then they'll, remove the streeteries and revert the street to the pre-pandemic curbside management plan for the most part. So we're hoping to do a neighborhood-wide valet program, and use some parking spaces up on 18th Street right in front of the McDonald's, like McDonald's and Akira in that area there. But we have to, we're working with a vendor who would provide the valet. They will probably apply for the public space permit because they're the ones that are going to run it. But we're working with them to kind of figure out where they're going to park the cars and all of that. But we're looking at this now with a spring start, it's not going to be anytime soon. We would hope to maybe get this started in April when the weather starts to warm up again. And we've been talking to DDOT about this too, but the valet application will have to go in front of the public space committee. And so that will take a couple months to put together, but DDOT's aware that we are exploring that option because, even with the restoration of parking on 18th Street, there's still never enough, right? So the Colonial Garage fills up, on weekend nights. And so we're hoping that maybe the valet would be helpful to kind of like bring more people into the neighborhood who might not normally come, because parking is so limited. So, yeah.
Thanks. Any other commissioners have questions or comments? I have a couple. And they were kind of aware that we're kind of blending into our next agenda items, so we'll kind of, I guess, seamlessly transition. One, the pilot program, at least to the best of my recollection, never actually saw like the parameters communicated to the ANC of what it was. In terms of like recurring operational expenses, what did the pilot program actually consist of? Do you know?
So the pilot was so the pilot, you know, and this was all funded by DDOT. So it provided the platforms, the railings, and then the overhead structures for 33 businesses, for 33 streeteries. And then the businesses then provided the tables and chairs. And I don't think anybody went through the process of actually applying for electricity to run, you know, conduit out and provide electricity out there. So, and partly, you know, partly because it was a pilot, like nobody wanted to make that investment, right? If it's not going to be something that they can keep, you know, they don't want to incur that kind of expense because that kind of thing is, you know, tens of thousands of dollars, right? Yeah, so, you know, and also, you know, part of the reason why I think they don't want to keep these as well is that they can't be enclosed in any way. So even if they did run electric out there for heat and light, you can't put up any kind of walls to keep the heat in. So nothing can be higher than I think 42 inches off the ground. So, you know, it's not, you know, if you can't, you know, keep some heat in, you can only use them when the weather is ideal, you know? So they're not really usable year round, but yet you have to pay for it year round, you know? So, you know, if they were only paying for it, you know, when the weather was good, then it might make it more feasible, but they have to pay for it year round.
So
So
so that expense, is that renting the equipment from the city or paying a lease on a space? Because the equipment seems like it's a one-time expense that the city already incurred, and those businesses already spent a lot of money on designing and constructing their own streeters in the past.
Mhm.
Did the
Right.
did the city reimburse them for taking down those structures?
No.
They are forced to lose money by creating structures and having them torn down, and then the city spends almost $1 million on new structures and claims
Mhm.
that it's something that has to be a recurring expense when it's a capital expenditure. And the actual like change is not even the pilot program though. It's the permanent regulations being enforced for the entire city. So I'm
Right.
just trying to figure out. I did so that leads into my second question. I'm guessing the answer is no. This is a hard question to get an answer from people. Did you find some sort of price threshold where business owners in Adams Morgan would say, if this was the cost per square foot, this would be feasible, or is that hard to gauge at this point?
Yeah, I mean, that wasn't really, you know, you know, the permanent regs were passed, you know, like, I don't know, months and months ago, right? And so like they knew like what it was going to cost, you know, and so they were basing all of their decisions on, you know, on the rollout of the permanent regs on December 1st, right? Like they can't, you know, they can't do anything different than that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time. I'm guessing that's the end of your comments, announcements.
Oh, yeah. So just one thing about the holidays. So we're gonna do the I think you all remember the metal trees that we had an architect make a couple years ago. So those are gonna come back out and we're gonna do a little celebration, a tree lighting celebration on Thursday, December 4th, I think that is. It's the first Thursday in December. Hang on, let me just confirm that date. December 4th, yes. And it'll be early evening. We'll have the fake snow and a band playing Christmas music, and we'll have the you know, the words in front of the trees that say all I want is you. That's been the theme of those trees. So, and I hope, fingers crossed, we can get the Grinch back. The Grinch was really fun. And we'll have some hot chocolate and hot cider from Compass Coffee also. So they were a great partner last year and providing some free samples. So yeah, so that'll be Thursday, early evening on December 4th. So something to put on your calendar and look forward to. Yeah, and then I'll be back, you know, in December to talk about some of our Valentine's Day stuff that'll be coming up in February.
I was about to ask why you're talking so many months ahead, but that's 4 weeks away, December. So
Yeah, right. I
makes
know.
sense. Yeah, appreciate
Yeah,
it.
yeah. And actually, I think the trees are going to be delivered next week already. They won't be lit, but they'll be installed just because the company that installs them does a lot of holiday stuff. And so like we have to take whatever date we can get. So they might actually be there next week.
I'll pretend not to see them for the time being. How's that sound?
Yeah. They won't be lit up until early December, but they might be there a couple weeks early.
Well, thank you for all that. Know you're hard at work. Appreciate and glad that Porch Fest went off well as well. Congratulations.
Yeah, sure thing. Thanks, everyone.
All right, so to the remainder of our regular agenda, just one item. Like I said, I'll introduce it again. This is just something I thought was worth discussing just because, like we mentioned earlier, the Streeter program kind of disproportionately affects Adams Morgan at this moment. The deadline to register to testify at this roundtable, the roundtable is tomorrow. The deadline to register is yesterday. I registered last minute just so we had somebody on there. Maybe there's the chance that Commission or Councilmember Allen's office will allow an ANC that after the deadline, but at an official meeting voted to have someone. Maybe they'll allow some grace to have someone on. I'm not sure. But we don't have to send anyone in officially. And if anyone else wanted to or already is registered, as residents and commissioners, are free to do so individually. But at least, anyone have thoughts on this? Is this something that anyone's interested in testimony? Like, there's no official testimony for us to review and say this is what we want. So it would kind of be entrusting somebody to represent some sort of views, which, depending on what we think those views might not be in everyone's best, or we might not come to a consensus on that, which I recognize. But wanted to see what people think in terms of what involvement, if any, ANC1C should have in this roundtable tomorrow.
Also, I think we should send somebody. If you're able to go, I think it would be good for you to go. I'm also furloughed. I can go. And I also think we as a group can probably come to some consensus items. I agree that probably the right move is to give someone some power and leeway to craft some talking points and testimony and just get it submitted. But I think we can probably as a group hit on what we think the three big points are. Which I'll say for me are that like this was a successful pilot. We learned a lot of things. The city shouldn't kill it by the pricing is effectively killing it. So there are improvements that we can make to the road surface, by having some more parking or loading zones. It sounds like they should start thinking about loosening requirements for construction so that the businesses can actually use them. And if businesses aren't going to use them, we should use that space as basically public parklets rather than just having it revert to parking, which is the most useless use of a public space in my mind. And my super fiery way to say this is that if we're really so short of parking, then we should pave over Calorama Park. Like people want more parks, not less. So maybe you don't want to send me if I'm going to say stuff like that, but that's where I stand.
We can workshop it. How's that sound? Any other thoughts, commissioners? And like I said, no one has to. I mean, also the difference between having us vote on something or voting on this item to send someone and not would be if the committee from the council committee would be hearing those views as representative of the full commission as opposed to a single commissioner, which in some cases can mean great weight is applied. And so I'm not actually sure if that would be the case here, but in any case, just minding the P's and Q's of how different council members, at least on paper, are supposed to listen to us. Other thoughts, comments, questions?
Do you think it's
Commissioner-
Oh,
Yeah, I was just saying your name.
oh, great. I wasn't sure. I heard commissioner, but I didn't hear my last name. So I do think we should send someone. I do think that it's important that we talk about how important it is to allow something like this to happen or to stay, which obviously they're not going to stay in the way that we would want them to, like the way they are right now. But I think it's important to convey that. And I agree that I really don't want this to turn back into parking spaces. So I think it's important for us to convey that in some way, but I understand also that if there are folks who feel differently, we should just discuss that now so we can talk about whether or not we want to send someone and what we want them to say. But that's how I feel.
Thanks, Commissioner Fucila.
Yeah, unfortunately I can't make it to the hearing tomorrow, but I would agree with what's been said so far regarding the parking. And I think it kind of feels like with what happened with RFK, as far as like it seems like a done deal that this is going to be happening. And so what's the best we can get out of it? And so I think that the parklet idea, or however we want to frame that, might be the most important thing that we can take to that roundtable.
Any other thoughts on just the premise of having someone represent the commission tomorrow? I mean, one thing we can do right now, like live, it doesn't have to be a super tedious effort. Try to come up with maybe like Commissioner Olson suggested, maybe 3 bullet points that are the main things, and then voting on if we want to trust somebody to testify on behalf or with the intent of characterizing those 3 bullet points or something like that. Anyone okay with that? Like one thing we heard, I mean, I'm just speaking from personal SMD 1CO3 experience. A lot of people in the last, has it been 5 years? Yeah, 5 years plus, have come out and talked about this a lot. Like almost everyone, I haven't like made a tally, but like basically anyone that's reached out to me has said some variation of the streeters are really cool, or what do I have to do to make sure that the streeters don't go away? This is something I've always wanted in my city. Maybe like counting on a single hand, some people that have said, I don't like streeteries, and those counter arguments in my experience are either that they perceive that it was bad for revenue. Like I asked one business owner if they had any evidence that that was hurting his revenue, and he didn't. And then the other people just kind of that are typically against things in general. Not to say it's not valid, but it's just a weaker argument than the people who have, peer-reviewed studies behind them. I mean, I'm curious, does anyone have any other thoughts on what views or kind of points might be worth bringing in front of this committee tomorrow? Commissioner Balke.
Thank you. I'm a little confused about exactly what you're talking about when you say a parklet. Are you talking about ripping out existing parking spaces on 18th Street and planting grass? Because I see this comment from Kristen in the comments that they charged 20 grand a year for each parklet in the Golden Triangle. I mean, in other words, the businesses are paying for those.
I'll say when I say this, I just mean like leave the streetery thing where it is and put a picnic bench on it and let people sit at it and as if it were public
Yeah.
space. That's what I mean by it, but that's a good
Okay.
point to clarify. It doesn't need
Yeah.
grass.
And I don't know much about the Golden Triangle bid. I don't know I don't know if Kristen's still on and if she could describe what those parklets are like. I'm generally in agreement that streeteries are a good thing and we should have at least some of them maintained in Adams Morgan. I don't know that we need all 30 or 33 of them, but the ones that are well managed and well maintained, I think they definitely add something to the neighborhood. So I'm fine with somebody appearing on behalf of ANC 1C to encourage additional, to continue the streetery program in a serious way. I'm a little leery of getting off into something else like, well, if we don't we should do this instead. You know what I mean? Just stick to the main point.
Thank you for that. Kristen has her hand raised. I'm guessing she was directly mentioned, so maybe that'll be helpful
Yeah.
to reiterate.
Yeah, so the streeteries that the Golden Triangle bid has are not they were they're built of the same materials that our streeteries were but they're parklets, so they have the railings and the platforms. They don't have overhead structures, and they just had tables and chairs, so they weren't attached to any particular business. The idea was that anybody could just go and sit in that space. There's some on the block of N that's right off of Connecticut Avenue. That's like one of the ones that I'm thinking of. And so DDOT did these, again, kind of like a pilot, and didn't charge for them. But now starting this year in 2026 fiscal year, they're going to charge the Golden Triangle bid $20,000 for each one. And yet they're not a revenue generating thing. They're not, it's not a business that is maintaining it. It's just public space. It's just a place to go and sit and eat, or just, sit. So, and, there's no overhead structure for any kind of shade either. So the Golden Triangle bid is like, well, we're not like, they don't want to pay for that either. I mean, that's a lot of money, especially when there's like 6 of them, so they're pushing back on DDOT about that as well.
Well, I've got you, Kristen. One quick question I forgot earlier. Do you have any idea, has DDOT communicated to you where these materials for the streeteries will go if they're removed?
Yeah, so it is going to be reused. It's not going to be tossed. So they're gonna put them in storage temporarily, but I think they're going to repurpose some of them in the downtown bid area for different purposes. So it's not going to be thrown away. So that's the good news. It is going to be repurposed.
I was expecting to be in storage, so I was just wondering what's the advantage to put it in storage to not, that's another question. That's not for you. Anyway, that was
Yeah. Storage first, and then come spring. See, the problem is like they're doing this like as it's getting, into winter, right? So they're gonna put them in storage until spring, and then in the spring, I think they're gonna use them in the downtown, bid areas in various locations. I'm not even really sure where, but they're working with the downtown bid on that.
Okay, thank you for that.
Sure.
Any other comments, questions, commissioners? One thing that stands out to me that we've said, it sounds like the main points that are potentially worth raising, that I mean, in any case, I'll probably raise myself, is that many, but not necessarily 100% of residents in Adams Morgan have some sort of favorable view of Streeteries. That there are dissenting opinions on that, but we recognize it, but also they're not necessarily the majority in the neighborhood. That the cost of renting the space in the city is pretty much uniformly too high for most small businesses to maintain the streeteries, and that there is an interest in finding some sort of way to at least modify the plans so that the streeteries don't go from 33 to 3 overnight in Adams Morgan. Does that sound like a fair list? Does that have any modifications, additions? Anyone have any thoughts on that?
I'll just restate to say that I heard from you, which is like, we like streeteries, don't kill the program.
That's
And if we are losing streeteries, do something other than parking with them.
Commissioner Diamond.
Yeah, I'm having trouble with my computer, so hopefully I won't fade out on you. So
Good.
I don't have a strong feeling either way about the streeteries. I do like them, but this discussion has made me think about the restaurants on Columbia Road, like Easy Tiger and Namak. All of those places have um, outside seating areas, which are really nice. And I feel like what I'm hearing is we like the streeteries, but if the streeteries have to go away, um, we don't, as a neighborhood or as a commission, maybe want it to revert to parking. So if the streeteries have to go away, I'm wondering if there's a way that we can't do something different, like expand the sidewalk. So instead of having 4 lanes of traffic or 2 lanes of traffic and 2 lanes of parking, expanding the sidewalk so that then there could be sidewalk cafes. So if the streeteries have to go away, is there an opportunity to do something different with 18th Street?
That's an interesting point, and maybe kind of what we're talking about here in a few different ways is, I mean, we can discuss this right now if we want to, but rather than having an extra point tomorrow of someone saying this is what we as a commission think should happen in the event the streeters are gone, we could maybe make a more general point that is, if the streeters are to go away, you should consult with Adams Morgan's ANC and potential other NCs to discuss what should happen as opposed to just automatically turning it into private
Right,
parking.
right. Because I think there was a community benefit to the streeteries, and we want to make sure we keep that benefit.
I agree, and I would probably testify tomorrow. I think there's other advantages too. Like I think that they make the crowds at the bars and restaurants tamer. I think it's probably good for reducing crime in public because there's crowds to be witnesses, things like that. Reduces vacancy, stuff like that. All the stuff that I testified when we said for the well, the past commission
Yeah,
testified
just what
regarding
one
the
other
moratorium
thing,
that
like
lost.
what they did on in Cleveland Park where they paved over that area. So like that to me is
And we've lost her. But I think the point was across. Maybe she'll bounce back while I'm speaking. But
I mean, Adams Morgan, I don't remember what year, and Kristen might know. But they did already,
that happened like
sidewalks on
2004.
18th Street have been expanded already
Yeah,
once. So I don't know in DDOT's overall plan what they would do. It did I freeze?
no, you're good.
Okay.
Commissioner Donovan did.
I'm just saying, like, I know the sidewalks have been expanded once,
Mhm.
at least in the last 15 years. So I don't
Yeah.
know what DDOT does, and they're planning to do that like again, but I that already did do a huge benefit. Like I know it helped to cut down like drunk people hitting each other and getting into fights.
Okay.
And that's what Georgetown doesn't have currently. Their sidewalks are very narrow. So I think they're trying to get to where Adams Morgan got to like 10 years ago. But I do, if DDOT had some alternatives to present other than just shutting down something, it would be, I think, easier to swallow.
Looks like Kristen has her hand again for some clarifying information.
Yeah, I was typing this in. But um, uh, yeah, the 18th Street Streetscape project was done in 2011. It was started in 2010, but it was finished in 2011, maybe 2012. And that expanded the sidewalks, and that's when we got the bulb outs and the mid-block crosswalk. And they planted all new street trees. They also did a lot of infrastructure upgrades, the Pepco and DC Water and Washington Gas. All of those utilities were upgraded at that point as well. But yeah, that project was finished in 2011. I think we had the ribbon cutting in 2012. But anyway, so that was not done that long ago. I think it cost $2.5 million at that time for that project.
Thank you for that. That's helpful context. Commissioners, any other thoughts, questions, comments? All right, so anyone in attendance, if you're, as always, free to chime in as well if you want to raise your hand. But if not, we can, I think, come close to wrapping this meeting. So I will move. This did not come from a committee, so I paused that thought, actually. We have one hand up. Pauline, welcome.
Hi, I'm Pauline. I am one of the neighbors for the Adams School, and I just wanted to resurface an ongoing issue about the soccer field use after hours. I know this was brought up again last week, and there's a last meeting, and there are some emails going on about it. But I think it's important to bring this up again, and because it affects the quality of life, like with the noise, the lights. Like right now, a game just ended where an adult soccer league had floodlights up since a few minutes to 6, so it's after dusk. I'm not quite sure how. I thought that it's a school, it's a park, so it's closed after dusk, but I'm not sure. So I just wanted to bring up the issue about, and also the trespassing. I live next to the school, so we see a lot here. There's jumping over the fence, there are adults, there's youth, there are parents with children. It doesn't matter who it is, it's just, we're supposed to call the police, but I'm sure they have other things to do. So I'm imploring you to help support us, see how we can coexist and have the school field used for what's needed for, but then also meet the needs of the community who lives around it.
Yeah, thank you for your thoughts. Public comments were early in the meeting, so I'll just treat this as it was part of that, just kind of an amended continuation.
Yeah.
Commissioner Balke, I know that you've kind of
Yeah.
worked on this to make a comment.
I don't know if the constituent was on the Zoom last month. We had a discussion about this, and since then there have been more emails. Been in touch with the school administrators, been in touch with our local Board of Education member, Ben Williams, been in touch with Commissioner Nadeau. They're all very much aware of this. We keep banging on them. My one strong recommendation is call 311 or go online. I understand the app doesn't work very well, but if you do it on your desktop or call them, I mean, yeah, police should come. This is trespassing. This is, damaging your quality of life. This is, unfortunately, this is what police do. I mean, not to segue off into, what police should and shouldn't be doing, but right now you need to get the police in there to chase these folks out and get the lights out and maintain, develop a record that this is a chronic problem so that they will address it more often and they will, address it with the school administrators. Just, I mean, absolutely positively keep complaining. Please do. And I'll continue to bang on my end, but it's, the squeaky wheel gets the grease around this place. And this is just another example of that, unfortunately.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, Pauline, for bringing those thoughts to us. As you can see, we've discussed it before, but still some work to do to find a good resolution. Going back to this item, if there's no other thoughts, I will move. I mean, no one in particular. Well, maybe someone.
Can we just
Commissioner Olson,
move
you
to
said you're
send
free
you,
tomorrow, so if
Peter?
no one else is wanting to contest for the privilege, I would move for Commissioner Olson to represent those bullet points that we discussed to the best of ability on behalf of the full commission tomorrow. Can I get a second? This did not come from committee, so I need a second. Thank
Second
you.
it.
Thank you, Commissioner Diamond. And yeah, any other last thoughts on this? I'm going to testify as 1CO3 commissioner, so I can be, I don't know, meaner or something. Any last thoughts on this, or we can put it to a vote? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
I
Aye.
I'll say aye. I will say for clarification, like I'm not on the agenda, so I'll write up
That's
notes and submit them as testimony, and you'll go in person, just to be clear.
That's a very good point, actually. Let's pretend the vote didn't happen yet. So there's a good chance that they won't let you on. I mean, I think it's worth just saying, right, literally after this meeting, sending an email to Commissioner Allen, the committee. So I'll find the email. Just sending them an email and saying, "Hey, we didn't get to vote to be able to do this until because of the time of our meeting until tonight. Could you do us a favor and make sure the community is represented in this official capacity and stick us on the agenda?" I've seen it happen when people didn't do that before, so I would expect them to be able to accommodate. But I think it's just kind of their decision if they want to or not. So in the event that they say no, we're too late, you could put together written testimony, and you can do that in either case. That and want to maybe try to see if they'll put you on the agenda as well to speak tomorrow. Does that sound all right?
Yeah, I would propose a backup of if they won't let
So
anybody swap in, but they will let you speak on behalf of the ANC, then we should keep your slot for the ANC as my proposal.
sounds good. That makes sense to everybody. That we'll try to get the committee to put Scott on. If he can't speak tomorrow, I will not be as mean and be nice. No, I wasn't gonna be mean anyway. But I'll instead of representing single member District 1 CO3, represent the entire. As long as I don't get some weird work call, which I think I will be okay tomorrow. So the timing works out. So yeah, try to get the in one way case or another, find a way to have the commission represented at tomorrow's roundtable. All right. So on that, the motion on the table is so set forth. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 I
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes 7-0, and that's tonight. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.